I believe there are 7 or 8 wrestling's most in the series, and we're going to release those the first Thursday of every month, and they're going to stay up here at youtube.com/KCVault. Sean, how did the Wrestling's Most series come about?
There was a show on VH1. It was a countdown show. They would do, I don't know, most controversial songs or whatever, and it was a countdown show hosted, well, not so much hosted, but with celebrities commenting on the countdown. They didn't only do music; they actually did like 80s TV show countdown and movies. So they would have performers from the pop culture era that they were discussing come on and do the countdown and comment on the items that were coming up in the countdown. So we said, well, let's have a wrestling one. And the way we were able to do it was we would shoot, because we were shooting, I mean, at one time at our busiest, we were doing 18 full-length shows a year. I think that was the most stocked our release calendar was. So we have people coming through all the time. I love the 80s. Thank you. That was Salvatore threw that up there.
And then that team eventually started out. They did a thing called Best Week Ever, and it was the same team.
Oh, really?
That people liked that. Like, I would call it their content farm. That it's like, let's do a decade show, but then let's also do just a weekly week in review show.
Right.
It's just talking heads. Like back when a million people would watch something like that on regular TV every week.
Right. So we figured, let's do a half-hour show. Let's do it, or were they an hour? I don't know. You guys will tell me how long the Wrestling's Most were. I think maybe they were an hour. So rather than the regular 2-hour shows or the 90-minute shows, we'll do a short 1-hour show where we did Wrestling's Most blank. So it would be Wrestling's Most Controversial Moment, Wrestling's Most Awful Angle, Wrestling's Most Awesome Manager. So we would put it out to fans on our website, and they would vote. They would get like 3 weeks to vote. We would direct them there. So the countdown was legit. It was entirely fan driven. So at the end of those 3 weeks, whatever the results were, that was it. It went out, and then we got to sit a talent down and do the countdown with them. And we would do it usually after. We do one of two ways. After a shoot, like let's say we did a Timeline Fit Finlay, we would shoot the show and break, change camera lighting, put up the green screen, and read him the countdown and get his reactions to the countdowns. And so with Fit there, we would do one whole season, which I think it was 4 per year we would release, 1 per quarter on the calendar. So we would do the 4 countdown topics and have him react to the 5 in the countdown. The other thing we would do is we often shot shows at conventions. So we would leave a day or a portion of a day with the Wrestling's Most setup in the corner. We'd be doing timelines and U-shoots over here, but we had that over there. So that when we had breaks in the production schedule, like in between a U-shoot and a timeline, because I didn't have enough to do that day, we try to grab a talent and run them in for a half hour and shoot their countdown segment. And then they'd go out and we'd grab another talent and run them in. And that allowed us to get access to people that had never been on KC shows, like Abyss, who at one point, he was doing the Joe Park thing, but I knew he was a fan, and I knew they'd never let him do a full show. So, but we were able to run him in and get the countdowns for him. So he was able to appear on a KC countdown show. So that's how we did those.
Once a fundamental part of the wrestling industry, managers have sadly fallen out of fashion within the sport in recent years. That's a shame. Managers usually were able to give a talent that extra something. If a wrestler lacked the necessary charisma or interview skills, having that manager at ringside could add that extra bit of drama needed to make a good match great. But this show isn't lamenting the loss of the once great managers. Rather, it's a celebration of the men who were the best of the best at what they did, as determined by you, the fans, and discussed and debated by the wrestlers themselves. Let's go now to the countdown of wrestling's most awesome manager.
Why did the managers go away? That's an incredible question that to this day, I still wonder. I think that as time went on, the performer, the wrestler, started becoming more interview savvy and able to do what the manager did. I also think that some of the companies probably said, hey, we got a payroll here. We're paying this guy to manage this guy, to talk for this guy, when this guy can really talk. So why are we doing this? I miss the managerial days. I miss the color that the managers brought and the controversy that they brought to the table.
Oh, a great manager has to be selfless. By selfless, I mean he has to know that the singles wrestler or the tag team wrestler that he's managing, or even the whole stable of wrestlers he's managing, are the number one priority to get over. And he's an instrument to get those individuals or tag teams or groups over. Once a manager realizes that, and I was a manager for a while with Right to Censor, I realized that the other members of the group needed to get over, and therefore I would get over along with them.
Quality as a great manager is not putting all the heat on yourself, helping your talent. It's not about you. I mean, you can help, not hinder.
Number 5 may surprise some people, but during the time that managers were falling by the wayside, this guy kept the tradition alive just about as good as anyone. Your number 5 choice for wrestling's most awesome manager is the Sinister Minister, James Mitchell.
Huh. Who the hell is James Mitchell?
Oh, he should be higher than that. James Mitchell should be a lot higher than number 5.
He shouldn't even been in the top 20 because his gimmick sucked.
I'm cool with him at number 5.
All time?
Who's James Mitchell?
We're talking about Vandenballs, right? Okay.
I don't know, and he's a good friend of mine. I don't know about putting him in the. I mean, who did you ask this to? Is this all ECW fans? What's the plus or minus ratio on your Gallup poll here?
Okay, interesting. He had, I'd call more of a condensed area that he worked in. You know, he was not hell of a karaoke singer, by the way.
I think he had the potential to be a great manager if he just would have came in about 15 years earlier, because he just had that whole dark side that Kevin Sullivan was sort of all about, and Kevin sort of made famous. But his was really unique and sort of vampirist. So I don't think you've ever really got a chance to see if he would have been top 5, but I have to see your other 4 before I mention that.
Don't get me wrong, James Mitchell is an excellent manager. I love this stuff in Smoky Mountain. You know, I stole one of his lines. You know, I'd rather go bobbing for apples in a colostomy bag. I stole that line from James Mitchell. He's a great wordsmanship of all time.
I am a fan of James Mitchell. Of all time, I'm not sure if he's in top 5 of all time, though.
Number 5? Are you kidding me? Okay, if he's the number 5 manager of all time, and I'm a manager, and I really didn't even remember who he was, I tend to disagree with that.
He had his nose so far up Paulie's ass until it was ridiculous. He played that. All the thing he was missing was some paint on his face and some white lips, and then he started doing the soft shoe and said, "Mammy." That gimmick sucked, but he played the game. That's the only reason he was there. And he played that old ass-kissing game, and he was the one that almost blew his fingers off. Well, he said he blew his fingers off on the show we did in ECW. So he had something in his hand, and it exploded. in the locker room. And he ended up going to the emergency room. And he kept saying that his fingers was missing. And he showed up the next week, they had reattached his fingers, and he had a little scar on the side. I'm like, boy, please.
Great little goatee there. And really, good at what he did. So interesting that he's number 5.
He was different, he's creepy. I always thought, I thought he was like, for somebody like Abyss that doesn't talk at all, I thought, he was like a modern day Paul Bearer almost, but he was good. He kind of had that little bit of a Jack Nicholson kind of thing going.
That guy can talk. You believe the gimmick, even though it's so outrageous. He's the devil. It's so outrageous. But he got Abyss over. He got people over in WCW, even with ridiculous gimmicks like Mortis. He can talk. He can pull you in, and he can make you believe every word that he's saying is true.
I liked the Sinister Minister deal. I thought it was a neat throwback to a little bit of some old school type heel manager shit.
Yeah, but Mitchell, great man. He lived his devil gimmick. He is the devil.
Sinister, great. A real pro that really got into the character and understood the psychology of it.
He's a guy that you can actually see as a character actor. I think that he was talented. He never fucked shit up. He never, he was good. He was a good manager.
The fans have a shallow knowledge of probably of what's out there or what was out there.
I love Jim. Excellent talker. Top 5?
He may have never had a run in the WWE, but that didn't stop the man at number 4 from being voted one of wrestling's most awesome managers. He was one of the best, he'll be greatly missed, and a KC alumni. Ladies and gentlemen, the Playboy, Gary Hart.
Oh, Gary was the man. Gary was the whitest black dude ever.
My man, I want you to go in, do your job, get it done. Let's go out to dinner. Let's go do some things. After that, go back tomorrow and do it all over again.
Great. Absolutely should be up there, at least that high.
Gary Hart was good. That's it. Good.
That's a good call. Even though Gary Hart never made it to a supposed national, worldwide level, in Texas he was probably the most hated manager there, and he did help get the talent that he was with over.
Now, Dusty Rhodes would have put him number 1. He said that he was the greatest manager ever because he really knew how to grab heat with doing next to nothing, like just a look, a tilt of the head. He had something that Dusty said was just, for anything that he was worked with him, he said he drew huge money.
I love Gary Hart, okay? Gary Hart was one of the most clever managers. He was not a very colorful manager. He bordered more on the businessman side. And Gary Hart, number 4, good placement.
Gary Hart, very good manager. I saw a lot of his work on VHS tapes and even some beta tapes back in the day. Remember betas? Damien doesn't remember betas because he wasn't even alive. Yeah, yay for me.
Gary had on face paint. That was a black guy.
I think he was underrated, if anything. I don't know who's going to be above him. But from what I've heard, that he had real good psychology, and he always, when you put things together, he was always an asset. As far as, it wasn't like he was just, if it was 3 guys working, he had, he always had some good input. Good finish guy.
He knew his game, was always a prominent figure anytime he worked with, anybody he worked with. He was, he's somebody to watch and learn from, absolutely.
Great mind, great talker. He can, he could sell ketchup popsicles to nuns wearing white gloves.
Gary Hart could talk, bro. You know what I mean? He'd get on a mic, and I was a kid watching him. Dude could cut pro. I ain't gonna lie, I used to try to imitate it, and I was a kid. But Gary had soul. He had some swag, And Gary had been with some black women. Gary had been to the hood, I'm telling you, because Gary knew, if you would have walked in the room, if you was blind, you'd be like this, who is that black dude on TV? What the hell are you talking about?
Colorful for back in the day. Colorful, real, believable, hated.
Oh, I hate where it belongs there.
He was the mouthpiece for the guys who, who were murderers, like, Abdul the Butcher. I mean, he drew people in, and he was a great mind too, especially with booking world class. So I mean, top 5, number 4. I could definitely see that. I definitely give my seal of approval.
Oh, she's terrible in the terrible worker. She's fucking rotten in the ring, but it was a great manager.
Gary Hart had the most successful quality of any manager, including Gary Hart, is a man that can talk. A man that can talk for talent. The origin of a manager in wrestling is you take people, and I'm not saying it because these guys aren't great workers, because they are, the Midnight Express. Jim Cornette was their manager because he could make up for their weaknesses and cause the whole group to have that strength, which is talking. You never heard Bobby Eaton or Dennis Condrey or Stan Lane talk, which actually, in a way, added to their mystique. Cornette talked, and the tag team did all the wrestling. It was a good combination that worked.
I don't know, because I believed that he was this bad thug from, Halsted Street in Chicago. And I mean, Gary Hart, what was it that he, J-Tex? Remember that with Terry Funk and Great Muda? And he had Hiro Matsuda out there. It was a really good stable, and big Gary Hart fan. And he was I was in Dallas with him. I had the honor of being in Dallas with him a little bit. And, yeah, well, in the global days, but at the Sportatorium, and brilliant.
Most of the classic managers were recognizable more for the gimmick they used than for the men they managed. There were canes, there were megaphones, and the next man that you voted for on the countdown of wrestling's most awesome managers had his, in hindsight, comically large mobile phone. Number 3, you guessed it, Paulie.
Awesome.
All right, I put him in there.
Ooh, as a manager? God, I'm going to have to say, yeah, as a manager up there too, yeah.
I hate to say anything good about that man. Anything at all. But I did steal a couple lines from him back in the day for interview purposes and promo purposes, because he could talk. He could talk a good game. I hate him so much. I hate to put him over in any way. But yeah, he knew his shit as a manager. He just sucked as a boss.
Paulie Dangerously, I've known since he was a kid because he used to shoot pictures for the wrestling magazines and send them. So he was a loudmouth back then. And he was very creative back then because if you saw a photograph that we were all taking by ringside, he pushed us out of the way and he would try and get the shot.
Paulie, yeah. His lip service. He never could bump. Never really could bump, you know what I mean? But he could cut a promo and get his point over.
Paul E's intelligence and creativity surprises me that he's not up even higher.
Without Paul E leaving the AWA and taking the Midnight Express to the NWA, Diamond Dallas Page never happens. Because I had just sent my tape to the AWA. And they called me up and they said, we want you and your boys to come in. I'd sent a tape of 3 guys who wanted to be wrestlers. They weren't. They wanted to be. I'd created storylines. I had an announcer. I had everything. Sent it to the AWA. They called me up. They said, we want to bring you guys in for a tryout. We have one question though. No, I've taken your tape around. No one knows you. Where are you guys working? Well, they can't wrestle. What? What'd you send it in for? Well, they want to be. It's like a secret society. It was like, don't call us, we'll call you. That next week, Paul E. Dangerously leaves with the Midnight Express and goes to the NWA. big hole open for a young guy who's got a big mouth. You know, it's funny. No. I laugh because so many people in wrestling don't even realize that a lifetime ago, Paul Heyman, also known as Paulie Dangerously, was one of the most most despised managers in wrestling. He did a lot of talking. Once again, a guy who carried that persona as a manager into being an on-air talent, a commentator, and then running a company. When Paulie talked to you, he could make you feel any way he wanted to make you feel. He can make you feel so high about yourself. He can make you feel so low. He can make you love him. He can make you hate him. He took those qualities, and those are based on Paulie Dangerously as the manager. And also the ridiculous cell phone, which was the first non-tennis racket or powder weapon that was used by a manager.
Yeah, but to me, there's managers that take bumps. There's managers that the manager thing is they're asking for something different. But I mean, you had your Grand Wizards and your Lou Albanos and your Freddie Blassies, and those guys pretty much they did your talking because your heels didn't talk then, and you know what I mean. Your managers did your talking, you know what I mean. And then the managers had were starting to take bumps and stuff like that, you know what I mean. So I think maybe this list would be more to me if you had like a pre-1980 and a post-1980, you know what I mean?
I think Paulie was good. I think sometimes Paulie would put heat on him rather than his talent.
Yeah. I mean, look at the stable he had. He managed Arn. He managed Beautiful Bobby, one of my favorite wrestlers. He managed Rick Rude, Steve Austin, Medusa. He had a hell of a stable.
Honestly, Paulie got people over that was weak on the mic. He got them over. That's why you have managers and valets. That's when you're weak. Paulie is a mouthpiece. You understand? And Paulie can cut promos and have you believing that you are green. And if you don't look in the mirror, you walk around all day saying, am I really green? Because he's so convincing in what he says, and he puts so much emotion and so much feeling into it, you know what I'm saying? So in order for him to manage somebody, they were lacking in that area, and he was there to make up for where they couldn't talk on the mic. And I give him credit where it was due. He knocked that boy upside the head with that damn phone that time, that little kid.
Paulie and the phone gimmick was tremendous. I mean, and he definitely revolutionized it from the big monstrosity, carry your cell phone in a suitcase type gimmick, to a time where I saw Paulie on an ECW show in Yonkers, New York, at a racetrack. And I maybe he forgot his phone that day, but he just brought the receiver of a rotary phone. Not a cell phone, a fucking rotary phone. No antenna. And he's talking into it. And you know how ECW fans are. They're brutal. They'll shit on you in the blink of an eye. They're looking to give you a reason to fucking shit on you. And they're just, Paulie's and they're going with it. He's like, yeah, Mom, I'm trying to call you back, blah, 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 blah. A fucking rotary phone. And the thing isn't even, the cord's not even plugged into the bottom of the phone.
I've said so many times, fuck Paulie, and I hate Paulie. And I just say that because people think this shit's a shoot. It's like the Ultimate Warrior thing. Like when I challenged Warrior to shoot fight. That whole thing. It's just like, nobody knows how much fucking absolute enjoyment I got when I watched a day and a half later his edited, rebuttaled, that he spent 2 fucking days of his life responding to one fucking tweet that I put out. I'm just like, that makes my life. And if you say fucking Paulie fucking sucks, if you thought the Sheet guys hated you a week ago, now you're fucking, you're Hitler in the synagogue. You're like, you're the worst fucking thing on the planet. So why do you say it? You say it for a fucking reaction. The guy's obviously brilliant.
Unfortunately, I got to spend very little time with Paulie. I really wish I would have had the opportunity to to have more. As a matter of fact, I don't think I ever personally spent any time with Paul Heyman. Most of the time I spent when I was on the phone, and I wish I would have got to work with him.
Paul never did anything to bullshit me. Paul made me believe in myself. Paul made the fans believe that he was Paul E. Dangerously, which, you know, it's a lost art not only in managerial gimmicks, but also wrestling gimmicks, where basically Paul E. Dangerously was an extension of Paul Heyman. Rich kid from Scarsdale, New York. His father was a lawyer. I mean, it really took the real elements of his life and made it into his character and multiplied it by 10.
Character, man. Long hair, bald spot, Yankee hat. I mean, any New Yorker had to love Paul E. Is it going to get hot if I say bald? I mean, I think everybody pretty much knows.
Wow, there's so many good managers, but he's one of the best talkers. You know, him and Cornette pretty much had a mirror career when you think about it. You know, they both, you know, broke in as photographers for their respective organizations. They both were broken by their promotions at the, you know, the various levels, you know, given, you know, and then they both became managers and they both ran two great organizations.
It seemed like there was a lot of Cornette influence in there, you know, a lot of Albano, Grand Wizard. Grand Wizardish in the fact that nobody got their hands on Paul very often, did they?
Yeah, he could just, you know, just ad-lib anything. I mean, that's one thing I've always prided myself into. I've never rehearsed anything. I never had scripts. Basically, it was, you know, Vince and Jim Ross, because they were always running gorilla position. They'd give me a microphone and say, "You have 7 minutes, go." Nothing was planned, and I would just go out there and just roll with it, you know. And no, but nowadays, everybody gets a script for their interviews, in-ring interviews when they're there. Everyone, even John Cena, they don't let anybody go out there with a microphone, but they trusted me enough back then to just let me roll with it. Like the whole slopping angle, you know, when I got slopped, for the first, you know, for the first like 10 minutes of that entire thing, it was my promo. All of that was right off the top of my head when I was out there. When, you know, when I was crying to Phineas and then I slapped him and then I heeled on him and then we did the whole run around the ring, it was completely off the cuff. Yeah. But who are we talking about now? Oh, Paul E. See? He's so forgetful. But no, he could do that too. And, you know, I did enjoy watching his interviews and stuff when he was a manager because he could do that. You know, but otherwise, I hate him.
I guess he gets put up there because of the other things besides the managing, huh? You know, because, I mean, just because some people, if he squatted down and took a shit in the ring, they'd think it was the fucking greatest thing in the world.
But we're talking then again, we're talking about manager now. So let's take the creativity part out of this and look at him as the manager of like the Dangerous Alliance, et cetera, and with the telephone, et cetera. He was terrific. He made people want to come in and hate him and whoever he managed. So he was great.
I think Paul, as a manager, maybe he's number 3. I don't know if he's in that spot. As a creative guy, as a personality of the ECW, he might be up at our number 2 in that world, the impact he had.
He was the typical mama's boy, pear-shaped and nerdy, with glasses, always relied on a tennis racket when he was in a pinch. He was a manager the fans loved to hate because each one of them knew that they could beat him up in a fair fight. And he just missed the top spot in our countdown of wrestling's most awesome managers. Here's your runner-up, Jim Cornette. Fans hate him. I love him.
All right, obviously Cornette's great in any era.
He should be number 1. He really should. I have a feeling I know who's going to be number 1, but my choice would be Cornette. And not just because he was my boss, and not just because he's a friend, and not just because he was my mentor and taught me almost everything he knows, but everything I know. Because he'll say that too. He taught me everything I know, but not everything he knows.
Props again. Jim was a heat seeker, you know, and Jim will make you so mad at him as a fan, you be like, God, if I could take that tennis racket and stick.
Yeah, I mean, he could easily be number 1.
Yeah. Up there. He's up there. You know, we haven't always seen eye to eye, and, you know, we've been on the other side of the track a time or two, but I always tended to agree with him more than I disagreed with him.
Good. I like Jim personal. Of course, it's all a personal opinion. I think Jim Cornette was good. Very vocal, very animated. I like Jim Cornette.
One of my favorites. I will tell you this, Jim Cornette has a very special place in my heart as being the transition from a wrestling fan to a wrestler. September 10th, 1989, I watched my favorite tag team, the Midnight Express, managed by Jim Cornette, beat Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson when they were in the Four Horsemen at the height of being World Tag Team Champions. They defeated them at the Philadelphia Civic Center, and that was the exact moment that I said I wanted to become a wrestler. And I told Cornette, and he said, don't blame that shit on me.
James E. Cornette is number 2. There's a racket going on here, I can tell that. Another manager who, his mouth was his biggest asset, and the tennis racket. You see, he incorporated that spoiled, rich boy attitude into what he was doing. He's another guy who, by the way, used to shoot pictures for the wrestling magazines. I don't know if you know that, but he photographed the Andy Kaufman-Jerry Lawler match for us way back then. But the tennis racket separated him, and his mouth separated him from all other managers. Everybody, when you would go to the matches and see James E. Cornette with the Midnight Express or anyone else that he managed, you always knew and you almost waited for that tennis racket to come into play.
Well, one of my favorite stories with Cornette was I was greener and shit, and we were in the, what the hell's the name of that place? It's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, the Job Mosque or whatever it is. I don't know, some Jaffa Mosque. Yeah, the Jaffa Mosque. And a mark hit the ring, and Cornette turned the fucking racket sideways and fucking just filleted this guy. By the time fucking the racket hit him, he was bleeding in his shoes. And I mean, a fucking riot about broke out. And I'm standing there watching at the curtain, and the boys are just piling into the fucking ring, because this is old school. You know, it's just like, fuck, shit's on. And Barry Windham said, come on, big man. I just said, well, fuck, shit's on, shit's on. And, we got Stan and Bobby back.
You know, like me personally, at times because of just, I was disrespectful to the Horsemen and, or whatever the case may be. Still not quite sure. But Jimmy's great. Cornette's awesome.
Cornette is one of a kind. There'll never be another human being like him, not just in wrestling, but in the world, Just, if I didn't learn under him, who knows where I would have ended up, He, I never had aspirations to be in the WWF. They just called me out of the blue one day. And I owe that a lot to what Cornette taught me, because it's not like I was like, I got to learn this, I got to do good in this because I want to get there one day and be on the big stage. I was never like that. I was a pre-med student. I was going to be a plastic surgeon. I was just doing Smoky Mountain to make some money on the weekends and not have to mooch off my dad so much because I was in school. I was supporting myself while I was in school. And I never looked for it to be anything past Smoky Mountain. But because of what Jim taught me, and because he was so good at what he did, I got to the point where they just called and they wanted me up there.
Jim's also got a great rap, and obviously we're taking guys these fans who are watching for the last 20 years. They didn't go back into the Captain Lou Albano's and Classy Freddie Blas, but Orrin Cornette, amazing mind, super motor mouth, piss you off. I mean, you wanted to choke him out, and you thought you could. And I think that's what Jim always played himself down and always made himself the chicken shit.
He made a guy like Mantar over, It's just, you could put Jim Cornette with anybody. You could put him with the proverbial broomstick, and people would be like, fuck that broomstick. Jim Cornette managing that broomstick? Fuck you, broomstick.
Where you lacked, he made up for it. You can't cut a promo, Jim will get you heat. And then finally, at some point, they end up getting Jim in the ring and killing him, and the whole building come down. They just, kill that. But no, Jim was the same thing. He knew how to get whoever he was managing over because they couldn't get themselves over. And usually when you have a manager, that's what you're there for. Jim was great.
You know, he could talk, he could bump, he could just do it all. Yeah, and the thing with Gary Hart, now is JJ Dillon could be in here too, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of these guys knew when the wrestlers were taking a break, that was their time to get up on the apron to do something. Hey, watch me while these guys are calling a spot or something like that. And they were good at stuff like that.
Not only has he got more stars over, but he's incited the most riots. You know, if you want people, if you have the power that people want to stab you, people want to break out your car windows, which, you know, if you hear all the Jim Cornette stories, you know, he's had people want to kill him. You know, if you read his book, he puts the hate mail right in there. People are outlining their middle fingers to him, you know. Jim Cornette's one of the best talkers of all time, and he can get anybody over. Number 2, I really can't argue with that. I mean, he could easily be number 1.
Nobody has the energy of Jim Cornette. Nobody has ever had the energy of Jim Cornette. I don't think anybody has ever had the wit of Jim Cornette. Seeing Jim on TV is one thing, but knowing Jim and just knowing how quick his wit is really, really amazing. I mean, he was smart, and that's what made him so entertaining.
Great talker. You know, I mean, you took 2 guys that couldn't speak a lick and made the greatest tag team in the world out of them. Those 2 guys today, come on. It wouldn't be happening.
One of the guys that you want to hate him, but sometimes he'll fucking make you laugh, you know. You know, talk about Sunshine, you know, she's he was talking about Sunshine, and he's like, I knew a girl named Virginia. We called her Virgin for short, but not for long, you know. And you want to hate him, but you're like, oh, that's fucking brilliant. That's so fucking funny.
He got a lot of heat because he was an extension, just like Paul Heyman, an extension of that real life Jim Cornette. He admitted he was a mama's boy. He loved his mother. He was from Louisville, Kentucky. He added the tennis racket. He really does dress like that. It's an extension of his real life persona. Also, he could talk. And when I said before, you mix in the guy that talks way too much with the tag team. They're very quiet, mysterious, and have a ton of mystique. It's a great combination. In a gimmick way, it's a lethal combination. But Jim could talk, he make you believe, and he definitely, I can't think of any other manager where you thought, if I ever get this guy in front of me, I'll punch him in the face.
He's had the natural ability to draw heat. I mean, I don't think that the man has ever been a babyface, you know? And he wouldn't want to be because it's much more fun to be a heel. And he just, you know, he was very easily, you know, disliked. And he had that gift. And, you know, he had the gift of gab, too. And that's another, you know, I stole a lot of things from Cornette as well. And he just has it. There's not a lot of people, there's hardly anyone in the world that could have that ability.
Another amazing mind that, you know, should still be in the top organization today, but, you know, he's a lone wolf. He believes what he believes in the business, and he sticks to it, and still doing his thing.
I always thought the Cornette was kind of soft, but like when you're out there, like you can tell he don't give a shit. He might beat his ass, but he's definitely gonna take some people down with him. And I just thought, I was just like, you know. I mean, you watch the Night of the Skywalkers, whatever, where he takes that bump off the scaffold. You know, that's one of those things in your life, it's like, you know, he got fucking completely painted into that corner. Nobody wanted to take a bump. He said, fuck it, I'll do it. And it fucking basically crippled him for life. But he did it because fucking it was somebody had to.
It's nothing against Jim, but I'm eager to see who number 1 is because there's a lot of managers not being mentioned that I'm very disappointed in.
We get to the top of the wrestling's most awesome manager countdown, and here we've got no phones, we've got no tennis rackets, we've got no canes. All this man needed to manage his men to the top was that.
Goes without saying.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
If they didn't say Bobby Heenan, I was going to get up out of this chair right here and rip that paper up.
Bobby Heenan at number one is, without a doubt, something I could never, ever, ever argue with. Bobby Heenan's the best manager ever.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'll go with that.
All right, Bobby the Brain, man. He could talk. That guy can make you laugh too. You know, him and Jerry the King Lawler. You know, obviously we're not talking about Jerry the manager or whatever. But as guys that can make you laugh, like listening to like a WrestleMania or something like that, Bobby the Brain was great.
I can't argue with Bobby Heenan being number one. Bobby Heenan, the man who kept Nick Bockwinkel, who is a good talker, very intelligent man, but kept the two of them were like a partnership, like their own little corporation. Bobby Heenan was an incredible manager. He was one of the earliest managers. I remember Bobby Heenan when he was a wrestler and how he used to study all the matches that were out there. And when they made him a manager and somebody nicknamed him the Weasel, he is the epitome of a weasel. He's a perfect manager.
He would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in my book. He had it all. He was a genius. I mean, he just, there was no one like him. Never will be. He takes all 5 spots in my book.
Bobby was great. I mean, he was prevalent on TV when I was watching as a fan in the '80s. He's one of the best out there. I'm sure he probably deserves to be number one. Like if it was my personal list, I would put Cornette, but Bobby's right up there. He's just, look at him. He could bump, he could work, he could manage, he could do anything.
I'll say it a million times. I love Bobby Heenan. And just to look at Bobby Heenan's career from wrestling to becoming a manager, managing one of the classiest wrestlers of all time in Nick Bockwinkel. The persona of, the smart rich guy, and just everything he did was perfect. And like the other guys on the list, if you didn't know what to do with a guy to get him over his heel, give him Bobby Heenan, and Bobby Heenan will make you a star, and Bobby Heenan will make people know your name, because Bobby Heenan knew how to get the talent over. He accentuated the positive in the talents that he managed.
Yeah, Bobby the Brain Heenan is the standard bearer. Bobby the Brain Heenan he had such a legacy before he even went to WWF, WWE, AWA. He made every wrestler, Nick Bockwinkel, other guys that could talk. Nick Bockwinkel could talk on his own, but adding Bobby Heenan gave him a level of, the fans, hatred that he didn't have. You could respect Nick Bockwinkel. He was a great AWA world champion, very well spoken, carried himself like a star, very professional. But then the main question you ask also in a situation like that, and having Bobby Heenan, like, why in the world is this world-class wrestler with this weasel?
Bobby Heenan was a mouthpiece. And the few times that he got thrown in the ring and got the crap beat out of him, people loved it. It was like Christmas every day of the week. They're like, oh, kill Bobby, because he knew he couldn't wrestle. You know what I mean? And they're like, finally, we got him. We got him. He got his ass whooped. He got bloodied up. He got his ass handed to him. Thank God, Bobby Heenan, same thing. He would get himself over by getting them over better than they could get themselves over without him. Does that make sense?
But just the fact that he can elicit responses from the fans just with a turn of a head, he could just turn his head and the crowd be like, Weasel, he has that magic, that aura about him.
And he was a chameleon. He could change to the persona to fit the character. He could tone his shit down. He could bring it up. If the guy didn't have a personality, he definitely. I knew it was going to be Bobby.
He became an incredible broadcaster, and that sarcasm is what brought him there.
Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon on primetime wrestling. Sometimes I would record it and skip through the matches just to watch Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon talk. To this day, when WWE Classics on Demand puts on primetime wrestling, I will watch the Bobby and Gorilla sections of the show and fast forward through the matches because I want to hear Bobby the Brain Heenan talk. And everything from his, you know, even in his book, you know, Bobby Heenan was, you know, behind the scenes, a great ribber. There was the classic story where I believe he was in a ring with Wally Carbo. Correct me if I'm wrong. He comes to the ring with a letter for Wally Carbo. Is Wally, I have an important announcement in this envelope, and I want you to read it to everybody in this audience. And this is on live TV. Wally Carbo opens the envelope, opens the piece of paper, and says, "Fuck you, Wally." And Wally Carbo's looking at this, reading, "Fuck you, Wally," and he's got to go, Bobby Heenan has just informed me that so-and-so did such and such.
He was a comedian all the way through, you know. He was I think, you know, I didn't travel with him during those years, of course. I was on the other side of the world, but I think he tried to keep his guys on track outside as well as inside, you know.
Never forget, the first time my wife had ever met a wrestler, I was in Chicago, and we weren't even married yet. We were just going out, stayed in separate rooms, of course. And I told her how intelligent Bobby Heenan and Nick Bockwinkel were, and they're not like a lot of the other guys, you know, just like, hey, I'm a wrestler. This type. You could talk intelligently to them. And we walked into a very classy restaurant, and Bobby Heenan sees a homeless woman, and he says, "Oh, look, they now make burlap bags for people to wear." It was terrible.
You wanted to hate Bobby Heenan. Like I said before, you wanted to hate Jim Cornette, but he would hit you with a one-liner, and you're like, that's fucking brilliant.
You see, you people are looking at as comedy. Bobby Heenan was spewing this as sarcasm at his opponents. He wasn't trying to be funny. He was trying to get people angry at him. Yes, he did come across like a stand-up comedian to the more modern fans, but back in the 70s when he was managing, and Nick Bockwinkel, etc., that stuff was only meant to be cool between he and Nick Bockwinkel.
There is a time to be fun. You know, it's like, you don't want to think what like a heel manager's, he's cutting a heel promo, but when you got somebody like Fred Blassie talking about Mil Mascaras from just crawling under the barbed wire at Tijuana, that wet back with the scratches on his back, that's funny shit. I mean, he's a heel and he's cutting a heel promo, but it's still pretty funny what he's saying, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think the funniness needs to be in there.
The wit on the guy, I mean, if he wasn't a wrestling manager, he could have been a stand-up comedian.
So quick, you know, just quick. And Kurt didn't need any, like, to me, it's one of those things where Kurt didn't need anybody. But by giving Kurt Bobby, it raised Kurt to a completely different level. And when you can do that, like, it's almost like, you know, John Lennon doesn't need Paul McCartney, but together, you know, it's one of those things where, and that was the thing with Bobby. He was never anything you put him into, he totally enhanced it.
You see his Hall of Fame speech, you know, the genuine emotion he showed from Missing Gorilla Monsoon, fucking tugged at your heartstrings, and I love Bobby. I wish him the best, and you know, the stuff he's going through now, he certainly doesn't deserve. Bobby's battle with cancer, for all the good he's done, he doesn't deserve what he's going through, and my heart goes out to him. I love Bobby.
There's nobody better than Bobby the Brain Heenan. He's the best. He was the best at putting his guys over and not taking too much you know, spotlight for himself. He loved to have egg on his face. He's a phenomenal bump taker. Just, I mean, the art of the psychology, the art of the sell, the art of all these things. Like, I mean, he was amazing at all of them. He's the best manager ever of all time.
Yeah, another guy who drew and took the bumps and did all the stuff. You know, Bobby was probably, they did a good job. When I look at the top five now, as I look back at it, that Vanden Balls is even in that top five. Good for you, Vandy.
Bobby Heenan was a great manager. I mean, just a great personality, and I did have the opportunity to work with Bobby at WCW, and that was great. But still some back in the day that I'm not hearing about, and I'm a little disappointed.
Now, I'd like to make a comment. There are two people missing off this list that I would have put right at the top of the list. First of all, Captain Lou Albano, okay? Are the people watching this not historically into this, where the captain's got it all, ability, agility, guts, maneuverability, brother?
And you want to know number one? Are you kidding me?
I know who I would put for number
Who would you put for number one?
Number one should be Captain Lou Albano.
That's ridiculous. Please give me a break.
Where's Lou Albano in there?
Captain Lou Albano brought hatred to a new height back in the days of Bruno Sammartino. People couldn't wait to see anyone kick the crap out of Lou Albano. He was a pioneer.
Where's Jimmy Hart deserves some some of Jimmy Hart's work is pretty damn good in the past. You know, all that Andy Kaufman stuff, a lot of that was phenomenal stuff.
How does the Grand Wizard of Wrestling not make that list? You know what Pat Kenny would say if he knew the Grand Wizard wasn't on that list?
The Grand Wizard of Wrestling. When you look at me and you say kayfabe commentaries, you don't know the meaning of it, my boy. He was Ernie Roth, the Grand Wizard. Magically, on the East Coast here, he was the Grand Wizard. And then when he would go over to Detroit, a metamorphosis would take place and he would become Abdullah Farouk, the manager of the Sheik. No other manager had two personalities, two distinct personalities, and worked in two different territories. Ernie Roth, the Grand Wizard, missed his heyday, which should have been from the start of WrestleMania forward. He would have so flourished. So the fact that Lou Albano and the Grand Wizard didn't make the list, really? Really? Really?